Thank you. Thank you for coming this afternoon. My name is James Woelfel. If you don't know me, that's great. If you do know me, I'm sorry. I'm here with Rod Owen, President and CEO of CC Owen Tile, Martin Howard, Executive Vice President of Operations for the David Allen Company, Nick Rusche, the President of TI Winston Company, and Greg Grazzini, the President of Grazzini Brothers and Company. And what we're here to talk about is the path forward, the future of commercial tile contracting. These are the issues we came up with, and I decided that I was going to ask the audience, which is the most important thing that there is on that list, and we can start with there. I've already made a moderator's decision, so we'll see if you agree with me. I'm saying qualified labor. There we go. Okay. So two of our people, Greg and Nick, are union contractors, and Martin and Rod are not union contractors, open shop. And so first thing I'm going to ask is about training, and I'll go to Greg. Greg, you have the tile apprenticeship program with the union, so what does that do?
So we're members of the Bricklayers and Allied Craft Workers in Minnesota. Outside of Minnesota, we're non-union as well, but have a very extensive knowledge of the union and union apprenticeship program. I sit as a trustee on our apprenticeship program. It's a great program, and it's a 5-year program for our tile setters in our marketplace. It's 2 years for finishers and 3 years for tile setters. It's a great program. It's split up into 2 different things. You have to be sponsored to become a tile setter. You can go through the finisher program without being sponsored, but the tile setter program, you have to be sponsored by an employer. So that's one start. So you get the people you want on the right track going through the different training. It's a certificate program. They get a certificate when they come out, and it's a good program. It's not a be-all, end-all. On-the-job training is still the best way for us to train our people and to get the variety out there. That's what we see, especially with the OJT, is they can't be just the mix guy all the time. They need to do the grouting, the finishing, the waterproofing, and that kind of stuff on the finisher side. And then for the tile side, they can't be just doing 4 1/4 and quarry tile. They got to do some thin panel with journeyman, that kind of stuff. So.
Nick, is it similar in your similar situation?
Yes, similar. Our training center is actually about a 3.5 hour drive away, and they make them train on weekdays. So we honestly, typically, if we have someone, we'll put them straight into the finisher program, on-the-job training, and for specialty installations, industry partners, Mapei, Latticrete, Custom, Stone Peak, they'll come and train our guys, and it really saves us a lot of time. And with the need for workers, it keeps our guys on site working instead of missing 2 days a week to go up to the training center. So.
Okay, so before I get to Rod and Martin, let me ask you a question. So Greg brought it up. You got 6,000 feet of 6x6 quarry mud bed with an epoxy set versus, say, a 5x10 thin panel installation. How do you designate who you want from who you're pulling for in your labor pool?
Well, for us, it's, team up, some quality journeymen with some rookies or newbies or people that are learning and have some capability and capacity to do it. So it's OJT, just like we all started, all our companies started. You got one good tile setter to start out with, and you build from there, and they bring on that whole.
Do you have to designate the type of installation to get the people that you want, or not? Nick?
No, I would say when you mentioned both of those methods, there's room for a new guy, and there's room for an expert for both of those type installations where everybody can learn.
Okay. Rod, I know that you're involved with the high school students and the training, maybe the junior colleges here in Georgia. Can you explain that a little bit?
Well, so I've been involved with CEFCA, which is the Construction Education Foundation of Georgia. They actually changed the name about 2 years ago to Construction Ready. But it's a network that gets into the high schools throughout the state of Georgia and educates them on the opportunities in the trades. And my involvement was to get in there and use that as an avenue to educate them on the opportunities in tile. I've served on the board of directors for 5 years with them, and we also had the Skills USA tile competition set up in Georgia about 4 years ago, which gave the kids an opportunity to do some hands-on in a competition atmosphere. But I think that, that's a good avenue to bring awareness to the students of the opportunities within tile that they're currently not getting by any other means. So you do that from a recruitment standpoint, and then obviously once you bring them in, then you've got to train them up. So we have a Department of Labor approved apprenticeship program in-house for in-house employees that we push them through. It's a four-year program, and they get a certification, a journeyman certification at the end of it. We also use subcontractors when necessary, because I think if everybody knows in the world of contracting, you got highs and lows. So you keep you base W-2 people in-house. You keep them busy, and then when you're overloaded, you have opportunities to bring subcontractors in to fill that need. And what we do is we partner with those subcontractors that we feel like align with our values, our company values, and part of that is we bring them in periodically throughout the year to do safety and technical training to make sure that they're up to speed on proper techniques.
Okay, so you answered both questions at once, so I appreciate that.
Thank you. You're welcome.
So Martin, in-house training or any type of thing that you do for your employees?
Similar to Rod, we have a Department of Labor apprenticeship program that we utilize, the National Tile Contractors Association apprenticeship for finishers and setters. And a lot of that's on-the-job training in-house.
And then do you marry your employees up to the, I could tell you did for the Signia Hotel, as I took the tour yesterday.
Okay.
Nice job, by the way.
Thank you.
I haven't tripped it. When I do, I'll make a claim. Do you marry your installers up to the jobs?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So if they're, like I was asking Greg, so you have a 6x6 quarry mud epoxy versus a GPTP type of installation.
Right.
You get the best of the best on those two type of installations.
Yes, we do.
Okay. So that was semi kind of the easy question. Now here's the $64,000 question. Greg, how do you retain those employees?
Well, we live in America, so anybody can do anything they want as it relates to work. It's a lot of it's culture. Rod talked about culture. What you bring is a business. We've been around for 100 years. It's one of our selling points. We've had a lot of success throughout those years. We try to marry people up with journeyman tile setters, men and women, to line up with how that person seems to react. So we try to make teams that'll bring them along and promote the trade for sure. But ultimately, at the end, if there's a really ambitious person out there that wants to move on and make their life of their own, they'll do it. And we've had many of them. We've trained many of them. Generally, they don't directly work in our marketplace, so it's not that bad. But nonetheless, it's hard to lose somebody that you've trained up and spent a lot of time with. So when you have them, you need to make, as much hay as you can with them, because they may move on. There's no question about it.
Nick?
I'll echo what Greg said. Just really, we lost a couple 30-plus year installers. They went into their own business, and I'm happy for them. And to communicate that to the guys, our existing guys, it's just like, that's great. If you can, we're happy to have you. We'll, as you said, make hay while you're here and cheer for your success, because they're not going to really compete commercially with us. They're going into residential. But one thing we've implemented lately is an incentive program. I mean, you can do everything. You can have a good culture, but money ultimately talks. And we used to protect our numbers and hide and really leave the guys in the dark on, goals and production. And by sharing that, we just completed a large project and shared every last number with them, said if you beat it, you get this. And it worked well, kept everybody happy, including the general contractor.
Rod?
Well, there's something worse than you training your people and them leaving, and that's them staying and you not training them. So I think it's, it's critical from that perspective, but retention is key. Retention is key when you want to properly progress somebody through a training avenue. And it's very aggravating, and we've had it several times where somebody will get through only about a year or 2 years through a training program, and all of a sudden
They're a tile setter.
they think they know what they need to know.
Yep.
And they're going to go out to work for, contractor X as a tile setter. And really what they are is probably what I would call a line setter, that is somebody that sets 12 by 24 supervised in an open environment. They're not a trained professional at that point, but it's unfortunate that we do have a little bit of a fragmented industry, and what I consider to be a trained professional is not the same as the guy down the street.
Right.
So it's tough retaining people and educating them on the value of properly being trained. Really about all you can do is educate them on that, provide, a competitive compensation. And when I say compensation, I'm just not talking about, the dollar value. I'm talking about the benefits, the full compensation package that comes along with benefits and paid time off and retirement contributions. So, beyond that, at the end of the day, it's right to work. They can leave at free will, and hey, I can't, if that's their choice, that's their choice. There's nothing I can do about it.
Martin?
Yeah, I think the challenge is many of the installers don't really appreciate that benefit package, and they're quick to look at their take-home pay, and if they can make 50 cents an hour or better somewhere else or something, that it just doesn't seem to carry a whole lot of weight with them. We try to educate them, we try to give them the comparison, and
I remember,
ultimately,
I'm a commercial contractor as well, and I've had some of my CTF people leave as well, and you put 20 years in money into training them, and it used to be where if you trained people, they would stay because they're enjoying their work and they're getting better at it, and that's just not today's world anymore.
Right.
So retainage is just as important as finding. You don't get addition from subtraction in our business.
That's right.
So, okay, thank you. Those are great answers, by the way. So I'm going back to this. So we'll go back to the audience. This is not a moderator decision. I want the audience to tell us what they think is the next most important thing. Okay? Don't be shy. Is it labor-only contracts and flooring, or is it risk flow, tile manufacturing, and distribution? We're not going to get through all these, I can tell you that right now. So let's pick the most important things. Do you think technology is more important than risk flow to yourself?
Well, I think that the two are intertwined. I think that people don't have a grasp on the technology and are not educating themselves or educating their people and their teams on what that technology is that they'll have to make it.
So you're talking technology not in the office, but technology in the field? Okay, so the new best way of installing tile, the best products, the new tools, things like that, the new oversight tools and everything else like that. Who else agrees with that? Do you agree with that? Let's start with Nick. Do you agree with that? Technology?
Technology in the field,
Yeah.
we're, I can remember 10, 15 years ago being forced to buy iPads and didn't like it. So I'd say we're okay technology-wise in the field. It's really, our issues are the general contractor not communicating updates and changes and
Yeah, we
and
talked
being a
about
little
that.
left behind. Yeah, we talked backstage about that. So I don't have any issues with it.
Martin?
yeah, I think obviously keeping up with the technology of the new products and installation methods and techniques is vital. You have to do that, and that requires constant training. As far as what you just mentioned about the iPads and general contractors communicating information, that really applies to the risk flow.
Yeah.
And it's, in our world as commercial contractors, general contractors no longer issue anything with any thought. They just issue it, they broadcast it to everybody on the project through whatever portal they use. And it's up to you to even know that it's been posted, go look at it, determine if it applies to you or not, and provide the pricing back or take the appropriate action based on what they've posted. So that just adds a tremendous amount of time and risk.
So we can tie the two together then. We can tie risk flow and technology together.
Sure.
I was telling Nick a story. We were doing a job a couple of years ago where I got done at the end of the school, and all of a sudden the GC said, "Hey, you got one more bathroom left." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, over here in the administrator's office." I go, "No, I don't." "Oh, yeah, you got an RFI." The heading of the RFI said paint colors for the exterior of the building. Okay? I don't have enough time. You don't have enough time. You don't have enough time to read about exterior paint colors when it doesn't. And we came to an amicable decision and agreement on that, but that's the risk flow. Let's go more into the risk flow for the technology, Greg. So risk flow, I'm looking at myself as what we just talked about. We're getting issued plans as opposed to separate RFIs that just deal with us. Now they're just spitting it out to everybody, correct?
It's overhead. It adds up to overhead. Everybody's talking about it. I mean, you have to have an office engineer or project engineer looking at all this stuff and looking past the title and looking at the drawings and details and all that kind of stuff on your Procores and your Constructwares and all those different, and they got to know how to navigate them. Not just, I mean, I'm not going to be the one that's navigating them really quickly. I can get through them, but they're not, I'm not the most efficient. You know, they'll change one thing 1 week, and then 2 weeks later, they're, oh, we're going to do something different. And you're kind of going, whoa, wait a minute here. You got to keep us up to speed here. We don't pay attention to everything that you guys bring across, but it's tough. We do have a lot of staff in our business, but most people can't stomach that kind of cost and overhead. There's a lot of risk as it relates for missing that stuff. Now, and you know, the contracts all say it, you know, you got the documents complete, all that happy stuff, but if there's a change, there is a change. And ultimately, we've been able to fight it similarly to you. What you said, James, is, you know, we go with the contractor. If it's blatant miss by us, maybe we'll own up to some of it. But if we didn't ever give them pricing and it's additional work, by contract, you don't have to do it for free. They have to pay you to do it. No,
Yeah, that always thing that you have till May 4th to respond to this with a price.
Right.
Yeah, that's not necessarily true.
Right. Now, if they send you a $0 change order, then you have an issue. Because if you sign that $0 change order, you're going to be stuck with that work. But if you don't sign a $0 change order, it's not your work until you do that. Mm-hmm. So you got to watch that. Another big thing on that whole deal is schedules. They love to do the $0 schedule change orders. There is a lot of risk in schedules because unless you've given them all your dates, which we're really good about, we ask for their CPM schedule, then we divide our project up based on their CPM activities. And we manpower load all those activities, and we send them our durations as early as possible. I mean, like right after we sign a contract, so they can start planning that we need 20 days instead of the 4 days they gave us.
Right.
Where it's more realistic and they can get the trades in.
Do you ever have that discussion where you're at the end of the job and I sit there and I go in the trailer sometimes and I go, where was the push with the plumber when he was putting his underground?
Oh, yeah,
Those
yeah.
6 days there might have been kind of valuable right now.
Exactly.
Correct?
No, there's those things for sure.
Yeah.
Rod?
Yeah, I'd like to be a grader. Oh, don't worry, you got plenty of time. You know, my issue really with risk is that, you know, it's a general contractor continues to push more and more risk, you know, down the hill.
I was talking to Nick earlier about waiver of subrogation on your insurance. So if something happens on the job and the electrician does something stupid, all of us can be brought in on that job if there's a problem.
Right.
And so you have to sign waivers of subrogation. And your insurance, it costs more for them to issue a insurance policy if you're asking for a waiver. It's not a lot, but it still costs money. And the amount of money work that you all do, I'm sure it's a income type thing that affects the bottom line on that job.
You know, what's aggravating too is that, you know, and I don't want this to be kind of a general contractor roast, but We don't have any in the room, do we?
we have any general
Can I-
contractors in
Can
the
I
room?
speak freely? I'm just
You might want to leave if you are.
But, you know, it's aggravating for us that, you know, they're basically hiring people straight out of college and putting them
Right.
in decision-making positions. And it's affecting our cost. You know, we're having to pay for their continued education.
Well, my favorite example is at the beginning of a job when they're asking for the master grade certificates, and I haven't even submitted yet.
Yeah.
That's my favorite one.
Well, it's on the checklist.
Yeah, it's on the specs. It's in the specs. Where is it?
So, but it's really aggravating because you know, you can't, it seems like you can never talk to the person initially that you
decisions.
need to talk
Yeah.
to, without, you know, becoming a squeaky wheel, you know, if you will. It's like you got to go through these changes, and I personally think they do that by design.
Okay. Well, yeah, there's a lot of risk flow to us now. And usually when we're since we're a finish, we're usually the superintendent at the last part of the job.
That's right.
You know, your drains are always the highest point of the floor. Your wall's 3/4 of an inch out and 6 feet. Okay, the light switch, they always put it in the wrong place, you know, for your wainscot. So then you're dealing with the electrician, the plumber, okay, all those type, the framer,
Absolutely.
all those type things. I love it when the painter goes in there, they paint half your walls in your showers. And then you go in there and you say, hey, we need the paint off. Oh, you guys are just prima donnas.
Right.
You know, stuff like that. That's the stuff you run into on these jobs. So,
Well, it is aggravating that, you know, when they call us, it's always when they're out of time and they're out of money. So,
right. I'm fortunate enough to be overseeing a job that Greg does, and it's an enormous job with enormous logistical challenges. It's a working airport. And so to be on that job for the last year and a half, phenomenal how they're working through these logistics. When I went on the tour yesterday, I was more concerned or questioning more, not the tile installation, but the logistics of getting 300,000 feet of tile on a job site. You know, those are also things that are technology, that helps you technology ways and things that you talk to and things like that. But it's pretty amazing on these big, large contractor or commercial jobs, the logistics and the technology that's used to actually make the job work. And so I'll stop right now if you have questions on the first couple of topics we talked about, if you guys have any questions at all. Nothing? Okay. Sure.
So there's some conversation at the DOL and in general that an apprentice program shouldn't take 5 to 4 years.
Okay, so
Way to squeeze all of that into 2 years.
so the question is the DOL, they're asking about why it takes 4 or 5 years, and maybe we can squeeze it down to 2. You guys have any thoughts on that?
you know, it depends on what you're trying to produce. You know, you can do a 2-year finisher program. You know, I think as far as a tile setter, journeyman tile setter, 3 is about as minimum as you're gonna.
And that's not even getting into exotic installations either.
No.
Yeah.
But, you know, my opinion, I think you'd be hard pressed, you know, condensing it to 2.
I think you're more than doubling the amount of classroom time required each year, which just increases cost because you're taking your people out of the field to do that. So it's, you know,
Right, but then at that time, you're not getting your OJT,
right.
the on-the-job training.
Well, let's not leave Greg and Nick out of this conversation. Are they asking you to speed it? Are you guys asking, or is it a thing about speeding up the apprenticeship program for
You know,
your side?
the Department of Labor in the states that I'm involved in the apprenticeship programs for the union they set their standards based on hours. And they've got good standards, and it's approved and goes through the whole review process in the DOL. Yes, it'd be nice if people got there faster, but the beautiful thing about apprenticeship programs, if you have a prevailing wage job, you don't have to pay full scale. You only have to pay the apprentice scale, the registered apprentice scale. So if you have a registered apprentice that's working on a prevailing wage job and the rate's just, let's say in our marketplace, $75 an hour, and you have a first-year apprentice, the tile setter that makes $63 an hour, he's a legit prevailing wage as long as he's a registered apprentice. So in that respect, you know, if you got somebody that's got some ambition, you want to put them on the job, you get a little lower rate that you're going to pay, that kind of stuff. He or she is still doing the OJT stuff, but it's a way to bring those people along.
Okay, so we've mentioned between Rod and Greg, so for the audience who doesn't know, what does OJT mean?
On-the-job training.
Yep.
It's a big catchword.
That's probably pretty much the most valuable training you can ever get on in tile installation.
And in the union world, you have to have OJT hours before you get the rate.
So when we train helpers, one of the things that we train helpers to do to take the next step when we're up there is punch lists and patching. In order for us, that's what we do, in order so they can make sure that they don't either make the same mistake or they have a little bit more attention to detail when they're coming down the road, trying to get higher in there. But that's one of the things we do. Nick? Greg said it all?
Yes.
Okay. And I was going to go to labor-only contracts and one-stop flooring, but I'm going to leave that out because I want to go to tile manufacturing and distribution. Because as we've seen, to me, as we've seen the explosion of online distributors, okay? And everybody up here, including myself, has bought from online distributors in a considerable amount of way on projects. The biggest thing that just bugs the living crap out of you, Greg.
The box doesn't come when they tell you it's marked. Okay. It's the most confusion there ever was because you put a set of shop drawings or an instruction plan together and you know it's XYZ tile from Tile Bar, I'll use the name, and it comes on the job site and it's Stone Peak. Okay, well, come on. And the guys are going, well, pick up the phone, we got a call, blah, blah, blah. If you don't catch it in the warehouse.
So you can't run on down to Dow Tile and start screaming at them and looking through their warehouse. That's frustrating.
Yeah, no.
Nick?
It's been a battle with price increases, and I felt like we were the only losing side between the price wars of jobs that were delayed because of COVID, distributors, you know, passing on price increases, in that middle ground of trying to purchase early to lock it in. But then I point to Brian out in the audience there, but at one point I probably needed, you know, to double my warehouse space just to store everything for all our jobs, which I had to purchase to keep the price and all that. It seems like things have slowed down, but that's really the battle, is the spread between, you know, getting pricing for a job and then the job actually happening, which sometimes can be, you know, 3 years later.
Well, let's go to something else. So I'll use an example. So we bought a hotel through an online distributor. Okay, half down, half before they ship it. Okay, I go back to the GC, they pay for it, the owner pays for it, great. You can usually work that out.
If you can get it.
If you can work it out, yeah. I get it. I get the material, I open a couple boxes, and there's a couple tiles that are not that great, and I call them back up. Well, you have 24 hours to look through these 15,000 square feet of tile in your warehouse to see if there's any other problems. And I'm like, yeah, it doesn't work that way, kids. Have you run into that, Martin?
Not with that kind of limitation, no.
Okay.
But we have run into the case quite often where a specifier specifies a tile X, you know, series Y and color Z, and something totally different shows up on the job site, and we get accused of changing the spec or substituting materials without authorization or approval, and we're liars and cheaters. Yeah. And until we have to bring, you know, the distributor back in to clear all the confusion up.
Because they still think of us as a commodity. We're not very smart. We're not very smart as tile contractors.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things it is.
Yeah.
Rod?
Yeah. Well, I think that term's private labeling, isn't it?
I think that's what it's called, yeah.
Yeah, so that is certainly an issue, and it you know, I'll piggyback on what Martin said. You know, we'll have it shipped out there and on the job site, and you know, general contractors teams all of a sudden, you know, saying that's not what was approved, and so all of a sudden we've got to double back and go through hoops to prove to them that, yeah, it's what was approved, it just doesn't say it on the box, and that's a time sucker. It's you know, it takes time away from my team doing something that's unnecessary when they should be focused on doing something that's productive. So it's definitely an issue from our standpoint. You know, price escalation, it does seem to have kind of settled down a little bit, but we as contractors were kind of stuck in the middle. A lot of times, we ended up having to absorb some of that reluctantly.
It's fun,
A lot of
isn't
it.
But what do you do?
You can't
You
do
know?
anything, yeah.
So, but it certainly has been an issue. Freight, freight's, man, you can't hardly predict what freight's gonna be these days. It's
Right.
totally ridiculous.
Okay, let's go to the other side of that. What about manufacturing? Have you seen a deterioration in manufacturing on products?
Before we go with manufacturing, I want to kind of take the Band-Aid off a little bit.
Sure.
That's your
Yeah.
role, you'll normally.
That's my oral normal,
Yeah.
yes it is.
But, pre-COVID, most of our vendors worked really hard to hold their pricing
Right.
and keep things at least relatively close.
Or they communicated with us what they were doing.
That's right.
Yes.
Because they're specifying jobs that are at least 24 months out before the material's needed, and sometimes longer than that. So they understood that, and we were able to work together most of the time without having to incur cost increases that we weren't able to recover. Then COVID happened, and everything was out the window, and many quotes we would get, we were lucky if they said the price was good for 30 days. Most of the time, they were much shorter terms than that.
I saw some that were 14 days.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I think if there's a way for us to kind of try and get back to normal on that, because if you're specifying a project that is going to be 24, 36 months out before the material's needed, you're really, and you're not able to hold that price or closely monitor it and communicate it in a timely fashion, not only with your tile contractor, but with the specifier and the general contractor, you're really hanging your customer out to dry.
How many times do you see, because I'm working on Northeast Mesa Public Safety right now, and I sent a submittal in October. I just got selections the day before I left. But every 2 months, I was sending an email saying price escalation, price escalation. How many times do you guys do that?
all the time,
All the time?
Yeah.
It keeps the GC on their toes.
right?
It also keeps the distributor on their toes because you're asking to rework the pricing, correct? Yeah. You guys all do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you need to, that's one of the important things. It kind of gets lost in the shuffle of everything, but if you're delayed or the project's delayed or you get the submittal delayed, you guys have to go out and back check your pricing with the distributor, and you also have to put your GC on notice. Mine was because of the city of Mesa decided they want to take 6 months to figure out what they were doing, so I'm going to charge them for basically screwing around with it and not making a decision. So that's something as a commercial contractor, even a residential contractor, you guys need to make sure you back check your pricing and bring anything like that to your contractor, else you're going to be holding the bag on the price. And that's coming right out of your bottom line, period. I mentioned just a second ago, have you seen a deterioration in the manufacturing of tile?
Well, the problem with the manufacturing of tiles, none of the standards really apply to any given tile anymore because we're not putting 2x2s and 4 1/4 and 6x6 up anymore. It's all what they consider specialty tiles, so the manufacturing's all wide open to specifications. You can't point to an ANSI requirement for manufacturer and say, this doesn't fit into this thing, because they're going to call, well, it's a specialty tile, it doesn't have to fit into that. So, yes, but even the general, what we call old school tiles, the 4 1/4s and 6x6s, they're a lot looser than they used to be.
You would have been proud of me in Nancy on Sunday, because I went to war on beveled edges and rectified, so we're working
Thank
on
you.
that. You got it.
Please, thank you.
Nick?
It really depends. I don't keep a list of the bad tiles, but every now and then, part of the issue like you brought up, I'm not going to go through 15,000 feet piece by piece, 9 months before we need it. And we've had issues with shading and, the shade matches, 80% of it, but then the last 20 clearly was a different run and you have to fight, and it's, I don't know, I guess I wouldn't say it's gotten worse.
So it's an availability thing. They're telling you that they're going to send you one lot, and all of a sudden they can't.
Yeah.
So because maybe they're out, maybe they've lost people in the manufacturing process where they can't man the machines anymore, so they're
Yeah.
just throwing things together.
A couple more pallets they label it the same shade, but the last 2 pallets were much darker, and it's, I don't know, I feel like it always happens, unfortunately. I can't say it's gotten better or worse.
Rod?
Yeah, I'm gonna ditto what Greg and Nick said. You know,
Speak up a little bit.
can you not hear me?
No, I can't even hear
I
you.
like to talk soft.
Yeah, right.
Carry a big stick.
Yeah, right.
Carry a big
Rod
stick,
talks
yeah.
soft, there's a news flash.
But, yeah, I mean, manufacturing is a concern, and you know, in addition to what Nick and Greg said, I think, you know, a lot of the imports seem to be a little more problematic, in my personal opinion.
A little more problematic. Martin?
Well, I mean, let's face it, you know, the U.S. manufacturers are supplying about 30% of what we consume.
Right.
So that means 70% is coming from somewhere else. So they are tested in those countries to ISO standards for manufacturing.
Supposedly.
Supposedly. And sometimes they may test for water absorption to prove it's a porcelain, because there's a fine if they bring it in and it's not. And that's about all. But, so it's up to us to ask for that information early on, so that the manufacturer or the distributor, somebody has a chance to get the material tested.
So what I do now is when I talk to contractors or GCs or commercial or residential, usually after a problem, but hopefully before sometimes, is I used to say you have to have your handbook, your reference manual, and ANSI, 108, A108. Now I'm telling everybody to get an A137.1 book, so you know what those standards are in tile, sizing, warpage, wedging, okay? Those type of facial defects. You got table 2 that tells you about facial defects. 8 and 10 tell you about pressed tile versus porcelain tile. You have rectified down there. You really need to know the products you're installing. And so I would suggest to all of you who are contractors that you just fork over the money, send it to TCNA, and get yourself an ANSI A137.1 book. Because I have seen a deterioration of manufacturing in the last 2 years. And so it's something you really need to look for. And your installers need to look for it too, because, you know, usually you're 50 or 100 feet in, or depending on a ratio of the size of the job, you're going to know you have a problem. You know, most of the people, I had to get it done. It's okay to stop, because if it's the manufacturer's fault, they're going to come out there, they're probably going to pay you to stop, and they're going to get something back in there because they don't want Greg calling them up on the phone and telling them what he thinks of them, okay? Or Martin. You don't want Martin telling you what he thinks. And Rod will just yell at you.
One of the things that we talk about the manufacturing, that kind of stuff, and the problems we may have. One of the big things that our company tries to do is not buy from the online suppliers if we can help it. And we try to partner with the distributors and manufacturers that we've done work with, are reputable. When they have an issue, everybody has an issue on occasion, there's no question about it. But as we all know, it's how you handle your issue. You know, you bring it up to them, they say, okay, great, we got to figure this out. They come out, they send somebody out, they look at it, they go, yeah, you're right, it's not what it needs to be. We'll do this or that or whatever it might be. So if I can recommend to any contractor, build trade partner, vendor partner alliances, because it's a good way to keep your business going in the right direction. Yeah, they may not be always the cheapest price, but are you going on price or are you going on best value to your customers? Yeah, we know we always have to compete on price to a certain extent, but the bigger, more, let's say, more difficult and higher profile jobs, best value is definitely taken into account, at least with the customers I deal with.
I'm a big believer of what he said, building relationships. Nick, do you feel the same way?
Yeah, absolutely. I try and, I wish I could spend 100% of my dollars with distributors that have a presence where we are. I don't have the stats, but it feels like the majority of the issues we have are from people with no network anywhere near us or the online stores. And, I think this might be another rabbit hole, but it seems to be the rise of Material Bank has made it easier for designers to just pick something.
Not even knowing what size it is or anything.
Yeah. And just, they don't know where it comes from, and they want to use that, and then that's usually where our issues arise. But, local distributors, those relationships, they'll go to bat for you, they'll take care of you, and work with you too.
Here's a perfect one for you, Rod, and I want to know both from Martin and Rod on one of this. So how many times have you gone in on a job and they want a 10-foot high wall with no cuts, 12 by 24, and they've gone to Material Bank, or they've done it online knowing that the tile's actually 11.5 inches as opposed to 12? How many of those jobs have you run into, Martin?
Many.
Many.
Yeah.
Probably the most notable was It was a panel job, and it was full panels. There was no cuts in the wall. It was 30, almost 40 feet tall. And the architect had sized the wall to fit perfectly with the dimension of the panel. Only they used the nominal dimension, not the exact dimension. So we show up to do the job, and we have our mortar manufacturer representatives there. We have our equipment and tool manufacturer representative there, and our crew and everybody. And we lay out the job, and it's like, wait, this isn't what's on the drawing. So fortunately, the architect was there and sent us all home for the day, and the GC rebuilt the wall. And we
Wow.
started the next day.
That is like, never happens.
Never happened.
Right. Rod?
It's, you do see that quite often when they use the
Yeah.
nominal size, thinking it's gonna work out on the foot when it does not, you know? And then they don't want a 3/8 inch ground joint.
Or we were involved in the
I can make this work out, guys, but this is
we were-
what you're gonna get.
We were involved in a job with an online retailer, and we had the same situation on a 10-foot wall, 12 by 24. We told her, this is nominal sizing. You should have checked, the architect. I said, do you want the cut on the top or the bottom? Make the choice. I don't. I want it centered. I said, that's going to cost you about another 1,400 feet of tile because of the waste. We were fortunate enough to find the tile in Toronto, the last 2,000 feet in North America. And they don't have any extra because they quit making it. And everybody pointed the finger at her for the same things you're talking about. They're getting offline. They don't know what the sizing is, anything else like that. And they look at you, well, you're supposed to know the size. I said, well, there's maybe like 3 billion tiles made in the world, and you're making me decide what the size is? Go ahead.
Back to the 137.1 issue, in commercial construction, I would say probably nearly 100% of the specifications state that the tile has to meet 137.1. But as just discussed, a lot of the tiles that are being specified on the same job with the spec do not meet that. How has anybody dealt with that in their submittal process?
I'm fortunate. I did Avondale Aquatic, and they sent out Marazzi. I shouldn't say this. The tile manufacturer sent out some tile that had too much warpage in it, and I do inspections, so I did a field test on it before we installed it, and they had to bring in 500 feet so we could cull through that to get the best 200 feet to finish the project. So checking the tile before you install, after it's submitted and done, you have to check the tile. And that's why I'm saying you got to know 137.1 and try to do a field measurement. There's a great document that's coming out of the NTCA reference manual about field measuring tile. And that's a warning sign. But usually you don't get that until you get tile in hand.
But why couldn't you just say, your spec says you're supposed to meet 137.1, and you're telling us to use a tile that doesn't meet it, what do you want to do?
Yeah, we've done it before. I'm sure everybody up here has done it before. We sit there and say, okay, here's what the tile, it doesn't meet your spec. What do you want to do? Rewrite the specs, or are we going to use this tile? And like you said, go to now we're using handmade tiles, so therefore all bets are off at that point in time. You can play that nuclear weapon, or you can try to educate them, or you can prove to the distributor, you sent me a bunch of garbage, and here's why. So those are the options I have at that point in time. At least that's how I feel I have. But in the contract, I know the contract language follows your specifications. And so the best thing you can do is bring it to their attention and make the architect sign off on it. What do you think?
Well, I know what we do with David Allen sometimes, it depends on the job, but I was curious what the other companies did.
Okay, what do you guys do?
Well, we do a two-step process for any project. So we get a project in-house under contract. Before the submittal goes out, the shop drawing submittal, not as much the product submittal, but the shop drawing submittals, we have a pre-con meeting, or what we call a shop drawing review submittal. And we do a shop drawing every project. We have drafters that work for us. And so we bring in field ops, the project management team, and then the general manager of the division. And we sit in a room and we talk about every tile. If it's 4 tiles or 50 tiles, we look at every tile, look at, okay, how are we going to install this? What is it? Oh, looks like a potato chip. We better figure something out here. Look at the specs on this, blah, 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 blah. And then we do the same thing 2 to 3 weeks before as a pre-construction for the job, and get everybody back in the room, and all the things are submitted. Where's all the material? Is it online to be here when we need all that kind of stuff? So in that first what we call shop drawing review, you find a lot of if you have those different people in the room that always care about different things. You know, you get field ops, they care about one thing, project management cares about another, and then, you know, general managers, they care about one thing as well. So they're looking at it from different perspectives. So they're asking the questions, what are we gonna do about this? Or what do you think about this tile? Or what should we use for adhesive on this that meets the specifications? So you're doing all that kind of stuff. It's a lot of collaboration, but it's really made when the guys in the field get there, there's very, very few questions because it's on that shop drawing. We've already vetted it. We already understand it. So we're, you know, and the field ops people that go out there and say, you know, you got this tile, we're gonna have to do this kind of thing with it. Or you bring it up to the owner architect and say, what are you gonna do here because this ain't gonna work.
Nick?
In regards to your question, we don't do anything. I'll be honest, I don't think the architects even know what they put in the specs the majority of the time. You know, master grade certificates, all sorts of things. I wish they would even put a TCNA method. That's all they really, I hope they do. And most of the time they can't even do that. So it hasn't come up in my time.
Or you get your TCA method from 1976 thrown in the spec. That's always fun to see. Still see those every now
But
and
you
then.
still have the book to
As long as you got the
reference it.
book.
Yeah. Okay, we'll use mastic on the shower floor, okay? Rod?
Well, basically, we'd call it out if there was an issue like that. You know, it's all, basically everything we pretty much talk about is what I call risk management, you know.
Right.
Risk flow.
Risk flow, risk management, but it's, you know, understanding what you're up against and whether you want to call it out and whether you want to battle it, you know, so. but,
Or live on it, or die on another hill on that project.
That's right.
Okay. Martin?
Yeah, we do what Jason does.
Right. We don't have Jason up here. We have you.
Yeah, I mean, I
They
think.
look to you.
I think we try to point it out. We also try to get the appropriate party to get the material tested. If it was manufactured with the intent to meet 137.1, then we want to get it tested. If it's handmade tile, we try to educate everybody in the chain because, you know, and do mock-ups.
Okay.
Mock-ups are essential.
Okay.
To
No, I
help.
agree. I agree.
Especially if it's a product that is handmade or doesn't meet any manufacturing standard.
Let me do an editorial comment for
Okay.
this. I think if you don't do a mock-up, you're an idiot. Okay? You are.
Yes.
Because it's in there for that, and there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
And usually what we do is we dry lay on the worst part of the floor, the worst part of the wall. That way we can show them what we can and can't do, and maybe we'll get a change order out of it. That type of thing. So there's always that opportunity. We're not going to get to everything. I wanted to leave about 15 minutes since we started 5 minutes late. I wanted about 15 minutes for questions to see if we can fill that. If not, then I've got a couple other questions. So do we have any questions on what we spoke about? Really? Everybody knows everything? Come on. Okay. Oh, boy.
Uh-oh.
I have to know if you are experiencing a deluge of additional required
What's the definition of that?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
so on the required paperwork, let's narrow that down a little bit. On the massive required paperwork that you're supposed to do, what's been the latest and greatest that you've seen?
Well, you have contracts, you have submittals, you have,
But I mean, the latest thing that you've seen, I mean, Jahas were a big deal, Dahas are a big deal for a point, and now, do you see anything new on the horizon that you've seen?
no.
Just the
you had-
regular crap?
You had lead stuff 10 years
Yeah.
ago, that was a big thing, but now we're all accustomed to it, and we gotta still do it.
Right.
We're accustomed to it, and we have a system for it, but it's still a lot of freaking work.
Right.
Don't get me wrong, I mean, you gotta have somebody processing it.
Get your Google map out to see how long that far that tile came
Yeah.
from.
Nothing specific for us that are new challenges that we haven't, but even the contract administration, you know, we used to be able to get a contract out in a week. And we do a lot of contracts, don't get me wrong, but my people's 90 days.
To turn it around.
That's their goal, is to get it out in 90 days.
Nick, have you seen anything lately?
Lately, we've seen, paperwork-wise, I guess we're just used to it now. And as far as something new, we hit on it earlier, the schedule updates, where if you don't sign it, it actually means acceptance. And the schedules, I mean, we're one of the last trades on the job, so
Right.
the schedules are a mess.
They're
By the
garbage.
time they get to us anyway. And on one particular project, I said, you know what, every time I said I would write, I refuse to sign this. And they'd say, well, why? And then I'd say, well, you have 2 days for 4,000 feet of a lobby. Like, that doesn't make sense. And it's one of those jobs, I know it's going to work out. I know they're going to give us 4 weeks, but that piece of paper that some project engineer that's, or a co-op even, is trying to cram down my throat, it's just me even talking about it right now.
Oh, it's
something
getting
I-
you enraged, yes.
And, well, just the amount of time we now have to waste, correcting work, because it's another way for them to drive the risk down to us.
Rod?
Well, I was trying to think of what additional paperwork outside of the usual, that we deal with, but I think the bigger issue is, having to spend time responding to, crazy questions or issues that, there again, somebody that is not truly proficient.
That's a nice
I'm
word.
trying to be nice.
Yeah, I know, I can tell.
In the construction sequence, even the sequence of construction, just responding to those appropriately, because, as we all know, to not respond is basically to respond acceptance.
Commission by omission.
That's right. So you pretty much, if you disagree something, you can't just let it go.
That's right.
You've got to respond.
Martin?
Yeah, I agree with Rod. It's the, CM at risk delivery model
Right.
for construction is basically build design.
Exactly, yeah.
They go out and start building, and then they design it as they see it, and they discover, oh, I don't like this, I want to change it. It's RFIs from every trade, it's changes from the owner, it's changes from the architect, and it just all is a flood of information to every contractor on the project that you have to look at every piece of it.
So everybody on this stage, including myself, lives and dies on schedules. We always do. And then there was a seminar a few years back, and you were part of it, on how to make up that schedule. And the expert said, I have never, because that was his job, is to go in there and make up the schedule that they're behind on. He said, I've never been on a job where I've been able to make up the schedule, ever. And he's an expert at it. He said, once you've lost those days, you've lost those days. We've gotten close, but we've never made up the time in those days. So schedule, and you hold them to them, like Greg said, because at the beginning, everybody's kumbaya and it's all happy. You're 30 days from trying to get TC of O, and we're still waiting for a kitchen to be done. Hurry. That's when you get the overtime and stuff like that. If you're smart and you've documented to this point, you're going to get paid for. It's okay for people to be behind, but for you, it becomes a pain, and you need to be compensated for it. And that's one of the things you should walk away with is documentation and being compensated for the problems that you did not create in that situation. So, you guys have, yes?
Speaking from a distributor standpoint, I think it's my favorite customer, my other one is right here next to me. So I just want to sort of go back to this conversation about, pricing post-COVID, where it's at, price holds, things along that line. I can say that we've seen a slowdown, certainly of price increases. We've seen more cooperation to hold pricing and things along that line from a manufacturer standpoint.
Sure, and that's a good question. I think it's a double-edged sword. Does it help? Yes. The timing of it makes all the difference in the world. If you give us that before we have been awarded the project, now we're in a dilemma. Do we use the low price or do we use the high price? Do we want the job or not? If we have been awarded the job, communicate. That's one of the best things. One of the worst phone call is, 12 months after we've been awarded the job and 3 months before we're ready to order it because we're going to need it in 6 months, is to get that phone call that says, oh, we've had a price increase at, 30%, or we send our purchase order in and it gets sent back, oh, here's your new quote. And we didn't know anything about the price increase until that moment. That's the lack of communication and partnership that we need to really work together to try and bring back. And I appreciate what you're doing. So I think there is some work to be done there. And I think that goes back to Greg's point about developing relationships with vendors that you trust and work with and that will work with you. So, and that creates issues too sometimes because.
Yeah, I commented in the last session I was doing, so I get to see it from both sides now, from the contracting and from the consulting side. And when I see the breakdown 2 ways. I see communication breakdown. And I see that there's a lot of companies that are open and transparent, and I see that that's a great work environment on the job. And then I see the other side where they're not doing it. And then I see the lack of oversight, which drives 99% of the problems I look at.
Right.
But the conversation of being open and transparent, like you said with your employees, Nick, you're more open and transparent with them. And I think people want more honesty. And it's the ones that don't accept that honesty, then you sit there and go, do I really need to work for these people anymore? Oh, we'll make it up on the next job. That's never been said before. And you never make it up on the next job. Never happened either, yeah. So it's an open conversation not only with your employees, but with the GCs, with the designers, with the architects, and with the distributors. I mean, we're not grouping all distributors into this because you have to build that relationship. But the more honest the distributors are to us, and especially since you don't have a name to a face or a face to the name because it's online, that becomes a lot more difficult to develop that relationship. Sure, the bigger companies up here, they have people in their office talking to them because they're buying millions of dollars worth of tile, but you get a mid or a small commercial contractor, and they're still buying the same stuff, not in the amounts. You felt like you're out in the corner all by yourself on a desert island, and that's a problem.
To your point, Adam, yes, a longer price hold is good. I disclose that in all my bids. I'm working on a project right now. We'll be, I'm going to turn in my bid in a week, and I'll be there till 2027 if awarded. So it's tough to for you to expect to hold that price till 27, and it's just being upfront with the contractor saying our price is good till then, and then that's having the reasonable time is good. Maybe not escalation year by year. And there are, believe it or not, there's other distributors that hold their price for 14 days, and they won't even look at my bid for 14 days. So it's kind of ridiculous.
We got time for one more question. Anybody have any questions about anything?
I have a risk management question. As a manufacturer, we're contractor first, so we obviously go with the subcontractor as a service partner. But with clients or end users, owners wanting and asking specific buy direct questions, and they ask the tile contractor to come in and absorb the risk as the construction manager part, how do you handle that conversation? Or if they say, I want to purchase direct, but I want to ship to you, what are your risk management kind of?
Can I answer that for me personally? Okay. So
I was hoping you'd let me answer that.
I was too.
I want to answer this, and we'll let everybody answer because if they don't care, we'll do it. But as for me, I've been through so many seminars, thank goodness, here at Coverings, and meeting a lot of smart people, hell of a lot smarter people than I am. Okay, one, as a tile contractor, if somebody's going to supply that material, okay, first of all, I'm going to write something that says, okay, I am not responsible for the performance of that material. Because if you don't do that and the material itself fails, I'm on the hook. But if I write something that say, you're furnishing it, you're responsible for the performance if there's a performance failure. Secondly, and this happened at ASU one time, They wanted to buy all the tile, all 47,000 feet for the tile. And I said, fine, go for it. I said, we're starting this day. Boxes have to be stacked this way on the 4th floor. Half of them have to be open. Oh, by the way, you need to check them for sizing, okay? You're going to pick them up yourself, and you're going to stack them up there. Well, wait a minute, okay? I don't have a problem with owner-furnished materials, but I'm still marking the material up because I'm the one who's staging it.
Right.
And I'm the one who's looking at it, and I'm the one who's playing with it. So they might be getting a deal, but a responsible contractor is going to charge them for it.
Right.
Greg?
You make up your profit in the construction management fee.
I have to. You have to mark up both things, material and labor. If you're only marking up labor, you're losing money.
Smart.
You're still assuming, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Still assuming risk.
Yep.
And risk has a cost.
Yep.
And if you're not including a cost for that additional risk, then you're not legitimate, practicing as a legitimate business.
A professional contractor will do it like these guys are talking about. But in the real world, by selling material direct, it takes the professional contractor out of the
Right.
equation.
That's exactly right.
Because there's going to be some low-budget dudes and dudettes that are going to go out there and say, oh, I can do this, I don't have to pay for the material, I don't have to finance it, I don't have to do any of that kind of stuff. Oh, let's go get it, and they're labor brokers, that's what they are. When we have a material direct project, we usually walk away from it, unless it's somebody that we know really well and we know we're going to be treated right. Denver Airport, perfect
Yep.
example. The first 2 phases were supplied to us, but we had that all figured out. We did what James talked about. We included all those things that need to be included. But the 3rd phase, we bought the material. Nonetheless, as trade partners, you need to promote people that are professional and that can do the work and take the risks that are out there. They're not terrible risks. You just have to know the risks and price the risk in as a contractor. It's not to your benefit to sell direct unless you're just trying to get that sale, because you're going to turn into a lot of headaches, because we're going to go, not my issue, just get it to where I need it and I'll take it from here.
You get to be the umpire because guess what? Or they're going to be yelling at you because it's not my fault your tile was bad. The owner's going to say, you sold me bad tile, even though it's not, because they had the lowest person doing it. And so you as a distributor, or you as a manager, or whatever you're doing, you're going to be caught in that crossfire. And most of the time I look at failures in residential areas, the owners bought the tile themselves.
Yeah. I mean, 9 out of 10 times so far, we've taken a partner contractor into the end user and said, here's the absorbed risk that you don't recognize. I think it has a lot to do with educating the end user because they don't see it. But that one time, I'm just curious of how you either walk away from it or do you absorb it?
Here's the risk that you run too. You may lose that contractor that you sold to because of what happened, because they're going to say, you know what, I can't trust them. They're going to go to the owner and they're going to do this. So then you're going to lose a customer. And guess what? That tile contractor is going to tell that tile contractor who's going to tell that tile contractor, you know what, don't deal with them. They screw you in the end. I promise that happens. We live in a small world in tile contracting, and it gets around really quickly. Yep.
Yeah, we most of the time walk away.
Yeah.
We don't even price them.
Unless they're a good friend or you trust
Yeah.
them, and they recognize that you're going to mark it up in order for you to assume the risk.
And if it's a repeat customer, if it's a hotel franchisee or somebody like that, well, now my pricing is exposed.
Yeah,
Why, I just lost a customer.
because they'll go down the street and
They'll
get
go-
the
yeah.
guy that's just going to lick it and stick it.
That's right.
But the good thing about that is I get to make up that on the other
Yeah.
side, yeah. Which is really bad for the industry. Really bad for the industry. You don't want me on the job after the fact.
Yeah, we can't make a living only doing labor.
Yeah.
We have to make a living doing materials and labor.
That's
And
why
if you wanna-
the distributors who mark it down, who don't give what we call the idiot price, you know, that we get to mark up our materials fairly. I mean, it's not like we're marking it up $1 gazillion and making $1 million on the product.
Right.
I've always said, if I could pay my guys $100 an hour and I'm using a $100 square foot tile, fine, it's great. Okay, I'm on my boat in the Mediterranean, having a great time. But it doesn't work that way. It's a race to the bottom, but you have to keep people like this on your side. They're going to keep you out of trouble. They're going to keep you out of those lawsuits when there's a material issue. I promise you. Okay? They're professionals. That's why they're up here. They're the best of the best in the United States. Okay? Well, if we don't have any more questions, we're done. I appreciate you guys coming. Thank you very much for the interaction.
Thank you.